Good morning. It is very early, very cold this morning. It is feeling like winter now. So wake up and the house is, well, at least where I'm at right now, is feeling cool. So it wakes me up and makes me feel alive. If you remember, last time we read about Esau being furious with Jacob to the point of wanting to kill him for deceiving his father and stealing the birthright or the blessing. And so out of concern for his life, Rebekah and Isaac tell him to go back to the land of, or where his mother came from, and to find a wife in his mother's family. And so they do this, and again, because Esau was looking to take out revenge and kill Jacob, murder Jacob as soon as Isaac dies. So that's where we pick up at. Genesis chapter 28, verse 10. And Jacob went out of Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillow, and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. Now, here's kind of interesting. This is where we read about, if you've ever heard of Jacob's ladder, this is it. But not only that, there's something else kind of interesting to note. It talks about Jacob gathering stones to use as his pillow. Which, if you think about it, that wouldn't be too bad. If you grabbed a handful of small rocks, or an armful of small rocks, and just bunched them up, the problem would be too uncomfortable. However, English tradition has it that they say that they have found that stone, and it's very large. It's about the size of a loaf of bread. It's one big square or rectangular stone that they have to this day, they claim is the stone that Jacob laid his head on. And they use it, it's placed traditionally under the coronation chair. And so every king, since they've had this stone, which dates back many hundreds of years, every king that is coronated on a chair that sits above this stone. The stone is underneath the chair. And there's actually a movie about it, based on a true story of it was either Scottish or Irish. I think it was Irish. The Irish originally had it. And then when England conquered Ireland, the English took it. So a group of Irish college students sneak into where the coronation chair is, and they steal the stone. In the movie, it's about them being chased all over the countryside, and they end up breaking the stone in half. But it's not the real stone, because we read that Jacob, he gathered stones, plural, and they've since verified that it's not the actual stone that Jacob laid his head on. But it's just an interesting note, and it's kind of an interesting story. So if you have a chance, go check out the movie. I don't remember what the movie's called. Oh dear, I don't remember. But just go looking for coronation stone, and you'll probably find it. But it's an entertaining movie, but it's just that. So before I went off on that tangent, where was I? And he dreamed a dream, and behold, a ladder, verse 12. A ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascended and descended on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, thy father, and God of Isaac. And the land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. Now I just want to point out again, anytime you read all capitals, Lord, that has actually been put in place of God's name. Jehovah, Yahweh, Yahuwah. And the reason why I say those three different names is because nobody knows how to pronounce God's name. We know how to spell it, but because Hebrew is a dead language in that nobody speaks it anymore. Like Latin. Latin's a dead language. No nation group speaks Latin. So since Hebrew is a dead language, and Hebrew didn't have any vowels, all they had were consonants. So what we have done in our modern day, we have inserted vowels according to what we think it would have sounded like when it was being spoken. So if you can imagine, try reading a sentence out of a book or a paper and don't say the vowels. That's what Hebrew is like. So that's why we don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. So it could be Yahweh, it could be Yahuwah, it could be Jehovah. There's a whole bunch of different pronunciations, but we do know how his name is spelled and what it means. So therefore, anytime you see all cap Lord, that's God's name that they have replaced with Lord. Verse 14, and they said, shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south, and in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So God is saying to Jacob, I am going to bless you just as I blessed Abraham and just as I blessed Isaac, your father. So in a sense, he is confirming the Abrahamic blessing, or he's confirming the blessing that is now become a part of the Abrahamic line, that in the original blessing being that God would bless Abraham to be the father of nations. Verse 15, and behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into the land, for I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee. Verse 16, and Jacob awaked out of the sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. And he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And Jacob rose up early in the morning, and took the stone that he had put for his pillows, and set it up for a pillar, and poured oil upon the top of it. And he called the name of the place Bet-El, meaning the house of God. But the name of the city was called Luz at first. So you can go on biblical maps and find where the city of Luz was originally during the travels of Abraham. But then Luz became Bethel or Bet-El. Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I will go, I will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace. Then shall the Lord be my God. Excuse me. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that shall give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. So we see a couple things here. We see that Jacob is covenanting with God at this point. He has seen this vision or this dream, and it has moved him and impressed upon him so greatly that he is making a covenant with God that if God will take care of him, and if God will do what he says he will and provide Jacob with food and clothing. See, now you got to understand, Jacob is traveling, as far as we understand, he's traveling alone, and he's going to a strange land or strange people that he's not familiar with. As far as we understand, he's never met his uncle or his mother's family. And so he's striking off in faith to go find a wife among a people that he's not familiar with. And so he's telling God, look, if you will bring me back home safe, if you will take care of me and watch over me while I travel and bring me back home safely, then I will forever worship you. I will forever commit and devote myself to you. And another thing that's very interesting, now we know that Abraham paid a tithe to Melchizedek, that Abraham gave a tenth to Melchizedek. So we read again in verse 22, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. So tithing is not a... we'll find out that there's so much that we attribute to the law of Moses that actually isn't a part of the law of Moses, that preceded the law of Moses. For example, sacrifice, circumcision, and tithing. We know that tithing to Abraham. We know that Isaac very specifically mentioned a tenth. That a tenth isn't something that we just read in Malachi. That a tenth was a precedent that was set way back. There's some speculation that Moses showed a tenth. Not Moses, I'm sorry, Noah. But again, being explicitly listed as a tenth, the first was Abraham, and now the second is Jacob, expressly giving a tenth of everything they own to God. Chapter 29. Then God went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of the well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in its place. And Jacob said unto them, My brethren, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran are we. It's interesting that he's being very specific about the description of this well. So this must have been something very unique for the well to have a stone that was rolled away. Now, does that it kind of begs the question, what's the purpose of that stone? Now, my first thought is that it could have been an artesian well. If you are familiar with wells, an artesian well is a well that is under pressure. So once you uncover it, it'll flow by itself. It's not a well that you have to dig in the ground and drop a bucket in, like we first read about, or not first read, but like we read about with Rebekah when Abraham's servant went looking for a wife for Isaac. But they remove the well, and then they're able to water. So it seems to me when they remove the stone, that the well begins to flow of itself. Is that the case? We don't know. But that's just what it sounds like to me. That's an artesian well. Or it may be that the stone was over the well to protect the well from whatever, and that this stone apparently seemed to be a very sizable and heavy stone, because people would wait for it to be rolled away, and everybody would gather together and feed or water their flocks or cattle at the same time. And Jacob said unto them, My brethren, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran we are. And he said unto them, Know ye Laban the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said unto them, Is he well? And they said, He is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. And he said, Lo, is it yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together? Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them. And they said, We cannot until the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flocks of Laban his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. So, did Jacob recognize Rachel when she showed up, or the men that he was talking to, the people he was talking to, pointed her out? When I was reading this earlier, I was questioning that or thinking about that. If he recognized her, because we got to understand that Rachel's his cousin, is his first cousin, because his mother and her father are brother and sister. So could he see some resemblance and some family resemblance there? I don't know. But obviously, he was very, very taken by her the first time he saw her. And it seemed that was the case with Isaac and Sarah. Or I'm sorry, Isaac and Rebecca. I'm sorry, I struggle with names. It's not that I don't know who they are. I have a bad habit of getting names mixed up. Growing up, I thought my name was Martin, because my mother could never get out the right name to speak. And that's how often I feel I know who I'm thinking of. But I often just, I'm not good. I'm not, it's weird. I get names all jumbled up in my speech. Verse 11, and Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. And it came to pass that Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, Surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And Laban said unto Jacob, Behold, thou art a brother, that shouldst thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? So Jacob's been with Laban now a month, and obviously he's been working with the flocks and earning his food and his board, his room and board. And Laban says, you know, you don't have to do this for free. Tell me what your wages are, and I'll pay you. And let's see what Jacob says. Verse 16, and Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the eldest was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. You got to understand, apparently, seems to me that Jacob didn't come with money. You know, whereas Abraham sent his servant with all kinds of wealth and camels and whatnot to purchase a dowry or to provide a dowry for a wife. Jacob had none of this. Jacob, it seems to me, came without any money. He was broke when he showed up. And so rather than offering gifts of gold and whatnot, like his father Isaac did with Rebekah, he promised to work for 7 years. 7 years worth of wages for Rachel. Now, another thing that's interesting that's always been a hot debate was verse 17. The older sister, Leah, was tender-eyed. What exactly did that tender-eyed mean? Some people say that she had a lazy eye. Some people say that she was weepy, would cry a lot. Some people say that somehow there was something physically a defect about her. We don't know. It's one of those great mysteries. There's so many mysteries in the Bible that it's very specific in mentioning something, but it doesn't define what that something is. In this case, Leah having a tender eye, or she was tender-eyed. What does that mean? We don't know. But obviously Jacob loved Rachel, and the younger sister was his favorite. Verse 19, and Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than I should give her to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had for her. And Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place, and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter, and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. And Laban gave unto him his daughter Leah Zilpah, his handmaid, for a handmaiden. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah, and she said to Laban, and he said to Laban, what is this thou hast done unto me? Did I not serve thee for Rachel? Wherefore, when hast thou beguiled me? So, Jacob works for 7 years to have Rachel as his wife. And after the 7 years are up, Laban throws a big party, a big celebration. And I'm sure Jacob was to some extent intoxicated. They were celebrating, they were partying, it was a wedding night. And now it doesn't expressly say that Jacob was intoxicated, but it seems to be that would have been the case. So, because Jacob didn't recognize who Leah was until the next morning when they woke up. So in the process, they have the celebration, and then Laban sends Leah into Jacob the night of the wedding night, after all the celebrating and festivities, and Jacob isn't any the wiser until he wakes up. And so he's rightly upset. He is very upset, because here he thought he was working 7 years for Rachel. He wasn't interested in Leah, and their father, Rachel and Leah's father, Laban, pulled a switch on him. Verse 26, and Laban said, it must not be so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for thy service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. And I kind of get an idea of why Laban did this. There may be a number of motives or reasons, and we'll read later why Laban is doing this. So he says to Jacob, he says, look, spend a week with Leah, give her at least a week, a honeymoon week, if you will, a bridal week, and then once that week is over, I will give you Rachel, and you, as long as you promise to work another 7 years for her. And Laban gave Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to her to be her maid. And he went in also to Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. So at this point, we know now, up until this point, Jacob's been with Laban for 7 years, and he's promised to serve another 7 years. So we know that Jacob, so far, is with Laban 14 years. Now, we learn that he's there actually longer than that, for a couple of reasons. But we'll see that Laban is driven by money. We know that it seems to be that when Abraham's servant went looking for Isaac's wife, looking for Rebekah, that Laban was very enamored by the gifts and the wealth that Jacob sent. And so as soon as Jacob hears as soon as Laban hears who Jacob is, I think he gets the same thing. In his mind, he's thinking, ooh, this is a very wealthy family. Maybe I can benefit from this. So a lot of people criticize that Laban was a greedy man, which by all accounts, he probably was. Because we'll read some more things of what he does, because he's constantly being shady in his dealings with Jacob. So we'll leave it at that. Now Jacob's married. He has his two wives. Rachel and Leah, or Leah and Rachel. And he's also got their handmaids. So each wife has a handmaid, and that's Milcah and Bilhah. So the stage is set for Israel, and what a circus it is. We'll read about what happens. For people who claim that in the Old Testament or in the Bible, men could have more than one wife, I always point out that for every man that had multiple wives in the Bible, that man had multiple problems. And we saw that with Sarah and with Hagar, Abraham and his with Sarah and her handmaid, and we will definitely see that. See, Isaac, he didn't have multiple wives. He had one wife. He had Sarah throughout. Rebekah throughout their marriage, but Jacob ends up. Well, he has two wives right now. We'll read more later, but and he has a lot of troubles, a lot of trials. So just something to think about. Yes, men in the Old Testament had multiple wives, but they also had a multiplying of drama and family problems. So with that, have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you again maybe in a day or so. God bless.